Welcome, 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 guys. Thank you for hanging out. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How's it going? Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Giacomo will be joining any minute now. I just wanted to hop on and kind of give you guys an idea of what it is. Hey, how's it going? Give you guys an idea of what Let's Talk is. And I want to do these honest, real, raw conversations with people. And it's not just, and I think a lot of people may think it may just be celebrities or different things like that. Because a lot of times when we see these IG lives or we see these interviews, it's with an expert or it's with somebody. And part of what I want to do also is invite everyday people on here to have that conversation or have a conversation. I think we can always grow. We can always learn from people. And so thank you for checking in. Black Marriage Movement, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I can't wait. I can't wait for Giacomo to hop on here. He should be hopping on any minute if he's not already on here. There he is. Guys, thank you for hanging out. This is going to be great. We're going to introduce Giacomo for those of you who don't know who he is. But if you don't know, there he is.
Hey,
there he is. Oh, hey.
good morning.
Good morning.
You got some coffee? I got some water.
So here's what's funny. This is my favorite coffee mug, and it's Toronto. It's Toronto, Canada.
Hey, Toronto in the building. I love it.
Mug. It's a super solid mug. But anyway, man, how are you feeling this morning?
I feel good this morning. Yeah, I feel good.
That's
How
amazing.
about you?
I'm good. I just did a meditation. I did a workout. Just let the gratitude kind of set in for a little bit, man.
Well, you're ahead of me. I still got to get that in today.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to give people an idea of who you are if they don't know who you are, which is interesting because I was reading this description. I was like, man, I can't wait to dive into this. But musician, writer, director, philanthropist, actor, right? Husband, son. So my first question for you is, when was the first time you saw your idea of what it meant to be a man?
Yeah, I think definitely I was lucky enough that even though my parents did separate, it's pretty much as soon as I was born shortly after, I still got to grow up with a father that was really present in my life. And so I was born in Rome, in Italy. So the first kind of 6 years of my life, I was in Italy. And my mother, being Canadian, wanted to raise me in Canada, where she was from, and bring me back. And my father, unfortunately, was not raised with a father. And so he didn't want that generational trauma to continue.
Right.
And he was going to be damn sure that his kid was going to have a present father in his life. And so he left everything he knew and moved to a new country where he didn't know the culture, he didn't know the language, just so he could be in my life. And it's a debt I can never repay. And it's something that, just in its own taught me so much about what it is to be a man.
But if you could break that down to characteristics, right? Because he did something for you that was like, okay, let me do this from my heart. And so you felt that, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a sacrifice being made here. If you could break it down into characteristics, because we're in a time right now where everyone's trying to define things, right? Everyone wants to define what this movement.
Yeah, it's difficult to define. I mean, I guess a sort of sense of altruism, a sense of like, unconditional love, because that's not something that you do to ask something back.
Right.
That's something you do to do.
Right.
And so I think, and speaking of what a gentleman is, or a good man, or a kind man, that's really kind of, for me, what it comes down to is just sort of being someone of, a man of your word, and loving people unconditionally, and continuing to try to inspire other people to do the same. It's very contagious. And most of male role models that I had in my life growing up, which was like my father and my uncles and, you know, my grandfathers and stuff like that, we're all luckily men like this. So I had really great role models, almost in a way of like, damn, I don't know if I can ever achieve that. Like, like when I think about like what my grandfather accomplished and like what he went through and like the adversity that he faced and what he taught himself, I'm like, man, like, I don't know if I could have been as resilient as you.
Yeah. So then let me ask you, so you would think, or you would say, right, manhood is synonymous with love.
Definitely.
Do you think culturally our men are living that out?
Absolutely not. No, not at all.
And why do you think it is? Where do you think we lost that? Where do you think we that link got missed?
Well, I mean, you've heard this term, you know, fragile masculinity,
Sure.
which is being tossed around a lot right now. And I think that is. I think the whole patriarchy is breaking down.
Sure.
And we're seeing, you know, steps towards equality, and gender roles are being mixed up in the household. And you're even seeing commercials now for the first time ever of like, you know, like Tide and laundry commercials where the man's doing the dishes and the man's getting the kids off to school and the mom's on her laptop working. You know what I mean? Like, we would have never seen ads like that on the television 20, 30, 40 years ago, right? And so I think all these traditional roles that the patriarchy kind of set up of like, this is the way, this is the law, are all now being flipped on its head. And I think both men and women are kind of being tasked with this, like, well, whose responsibility is what? You know, what do we do? And at the end of the day, it's just like, it's just be a good person. Just help each other out. You know, there's no that this is a man's job or this is a woman's job. It's just like, let's just help each other, all be happy. You know what I mean? But they can be confusing. And I think a lot of people, myself included, I do love structure. I do love rules. I love things. That's how things are clear. You know what I mean? You don't, when the boundaries are clear, you don't get into trouble as easily, you know?
Yeah. So then let me switch gears on you, right? So you're talking about the way we operate in society. You talk about gender roles and these different things. I think the word chivalry plays a part in this conversation, right? So to you, this should be interesting to hear. Is chivalry dead?
No, God. I mean, it's obviously not dead.
Right.
I think in a way, it's funny. It's like chivalry has evolved, if anything.
Right.
You know, because these gender roles are all kind of being broken down, it's almost like that role. There's a very classic sense of a gentleman. You have this photograph of like some man in the 40s throwing down his overcoat over a puddle and letting a woman step across on, you know, these are these sort of very old traditional romantic ideas of what a gentleman is. But like, I think it's just being considerate. And I think being a gentleman is being a feminist, to be honest.
Really?
Like, it's like just, I think it does. I think it comes down to just like equality, you know what I mean? And making everybody feel seen and heard. Yeah. And I don't think that was being done as much as it is today, on both parts, on both sides.
It's interesting you say that, because I find the hardest thing right now for me is there's a little bit of both. I see a little bit of like men steering really, really far away from this idea of like being a gentleman, being chivalrous. And then I see these little glimmers of hope, right? Like there's so many things about you that I'm like, dude, you and I are so similar in a lot of ways, but then there's still this like classic man aspect to us, right? Whether it's motorcycles, boats, like horses, being in the woods, chopping wood, there's this like classic traditional idea of manhood with this layer of like, no, I do all those things, but my women around me are not beneath me, or they're not here to serve me. Like I can be that man and still uplift and empower women.
That's the most radical part of the whole concept is, and the people and the men that are fighting this are so afraid of, is they think that it's one or the other. And, you know, being open or vulnerable to your emotions, being able to talk about your feelings, to feel comfortable enough in a group setting to say, hey, you know, I saw my therapist this week and I had a really good talk and I had a breakthrough, and not feeling shame about sharing things like that with your community. You know, they think that if they do that, then they sacrifice that thing that you were talking about, which is this traditional idea of a man.
Of manhood.
If, you know, if I open myself up and I share in that way and I hold space in that way, I lose this very traditional sense of masculinity, and the world or the women in my life won't see me in that way anymore. And it's just simply not true. But it's going to take a lot more men and a lot of more generations of men doing that for it to be more normalized and across the country and the planet, you know.
If you could say something right now to, like, let's say a 15-year-old boy who has no clue about what it means to be a gentleman, he has no male role model, what would you share with him about the importance of living that out?
See, like, being a gentleman or just being a good man so much is like projecting on like how to treat other people. But I think the thing that's lost along the way is how to treat yourself. And I think the way you know, it's like, you can't be a gentleman. You can't be a kind, compassionate, loving person if you haven't figured your own stuff out, and
right.
how the either traumas in your life or the things that you haven't been afforded have disproportionately affected you and given you a handicap in life. And we all have it. You know what I mean? There's all different kinds of degrees. It's very complex. You know, but it does take that time, because until you're truly at peace with yourself, and I mean, that's an ongoing journey, you know, till the day you die.
Sure.
You can never really be a person who could hold space for someone else and allow love into your life. So I think it's a lot about doing the work on yourself, and finding what makes you happy, healing your wounds. And then suddenly you'll just, I think, be much more appreciative of life.
Sure.
And therefore treat others with much more kindness and respect, because you'll see that they have such tremendous value to you. And based on the things that you weren't afforded in your life, you deserve to have these gifts. Yeah, I think where we always go wrong, especially like there's been a lot of this like insurgence of you know, relationship experts or like emotional gurus online, you know, being like, you know, I don't really have a doctorate or anything, but let me tell you about relationships and how to like, and that's fine. And, you know, as long as these people are claiming that, look, just like I'm claiming in this moment, like anything that I say here is purely my opinion. Like I don't have some like crazy, like 10-year education in psychology and relationships. I'm just telling you based on like in the short time that I've been on the planet, this is what I've learned, you know, and I know that that's how you're operating as well. And you're always trying to grow and learn from other people. So, yeah.
But because that's that concept of self-love, right? I don't think I really found out about it. I didn't really even dive into it until I was about 20. I'm 31 now. I didn't really dive into it until about 24, 25. Self-love came up for me. And that's when I just got tired of like trying to find myself in women, right? I kept trying to find myself in women. I kept trying to find myself in situations that would somewhat make me feel good about myself, uplift me, kind of affirm my masculinity, if you will, in women. So for you, when do you think that you kind of had this moment of, okay, Giacomo needs to learn what it means to love himself, and that there's something that happened whether your parents separated or how you were at school, that I need to do some healing work on? Like, when was that for you?
Oh, it came very late. It came pretty much, let me see, probably about a year and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
A year and a half ago, yeah, and I'm 31 as well. And you know, I just I think what really caused this reaction in me to face a lot of the things from my past and how I grew up and things that I went through that I kind of hid was getting married. I realized I was about to commit my life to another soul, and I was just like, there's no way that I can commit myself to this person without them seeing the true me. You know what I mean? And for me to even be ready to share who that is with them, I got to share it with myself. I got to say it out loud myself. I got to be okay with it by myself.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I just felt like I would be cheating that person who I was about to marry if they didn't really know, you know, every single thing about me and like my past and all, you know, those things, being like, because I want to tell you what you're signing up for. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to cheat you. I don't want you to be like, whoa, this was not explained in the free trial. Like, I don't want the full subscription now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And likewise, and like those are things that, you know, and a lot of people, when I hear, you know, that they get married and stuff like that, or things happening quickly, oh, they got married so fast. Did you hear about them? They got married so fast. And it's like, I don't think there's anything about speed. I don't think there's a time limit. If you know, for me, it's just about the conversations. You have to have those really deep conversations. And if you want to get married in 20 days after meeting somebody, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You know what I mean? Like, if you guys have really had those deep, you know, till 5 a.m. and your eyes hurt talks on a couch about the way you view the world and what you value and what your future looks like, then go ahead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's people that have been together for years and they haven't even had that talk and they're getting married. So it's complicated.
But my next question is brought up because I think about how you're framing this, right? And we're talking about manhood, being a gentleman. We already said that manhood is synonymous with love. So then when you hear the word love, what comes to mind for you?
Love. Off the top of my head, patience, I guess, one word. Yeah, I think love is a patient game.
Yeah.
You have to have a lot of patience, but the payoff is tremendous. So in hindsight, you know, the cost is so small. We only make it seem large in the moment. I think another thing is that I've learned from marriage and certainly other men in my life is that it's more important to be happy than it is to be right. And that's something that I definitely need to ingrain into my head every day.
Let's just say that one more time for everybody, because I think that's such a big thing in a relationship, right? And what is it again, please?
It's more important to be happy than it is to be right.
Oof, my God.
It's deep. It's deep, man.
He's like, as soon as I get this call, I have to practice it, right? Like,
there's going to be moments in your life, if you're in love, where, you know, your partner will look up at the sky and say, the sky is green. And you'll say, no, honey, the sky is blue. And they'll say, no, the sky is green. And you know the sky is blue. And you'll have to agree with them and say, you know what, honey? Absolutely, the sky is green. Knowing full well it's blue. And you'll just have to say, yeah, the sky is green, because it's more important for me to be happy than it is to be right. And I want to have a good day today. You know what I mean? So that's just, you know, what it is.
Yeah.
So patience. Yeah, love is patience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully it's both partners that are patient, you know, with each other.
Because it's a dance, and we talk about that often. A lot of the men in my life, we talk about this dance and relationship, right? Where, God, I have an issue with wanting to be right because I'm a thinker. I'm a thinker, man. I'll think a whole argument,
Same.
I got backstory, I got everything.
Oh yeah, same.
We're going, right? But then I realize how she feels after is not worth me being right. If my whole point was to like, I got a strategy, I'm gonna show you why I did this and you're wrong, or we should have did it this way and you wanted it your way. The way she feels after does not speak to what my other romantic words have said.
No. And you're not thinking long term. You're caught in the moment. You're not seeing how this is going to negatively affect your life in about 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, it's real. You know what I mean? Like, my wife is like dying watching this video right now, I'm sure.
I can imagine.
You know, she calls me the lawyer. She calls me the lawyer because I break down the case and I have all the points and I remember all the words that were said and I hold her to task. You know, but at the end of the day, it's just like, yeah, but what I'm doing right now, is it worth, you know?
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, well, I could be arguing this point, or we could be holding each other,
right?
Or we could be loving each other, or we could be going for a walk. So why are we doing this? I don't even care. You know what I mean? It's just about, and look, it's like you do got to stand your ground, and that's
I was
not a
going to say
manhood
that,
thing.
right?
That's a both male and female thing.
You gotta,
But it's about, you know, the whole classic pick your battles. You know, there's that, and there's also just, you know, pick the ones that are really worth fighting for. And I'll say full well that even though I'm saying this, I am in no way a master of this skill.
Dude, I swear to God, I'm right there with you. Because so many people come to my page and I'm like, God, this guy's a master at like relationships.
No.
And I'm actively practicing these things and failing epically.
We are all so good at giving other people advice that we will never follow. But we're so good at giving it to other people. Yeah. Oh man, you have relationship problems? Just try this. And then you walk away being like, damn, I should try that.
I just try that.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm telling all these people to do it. Why am I not doing it myself?
Oh, shit.
But it's so true. We do.
It's probably one of the things that when I get them posting something, I immediately think to myself, oh, this is going to bite me in the ass.
Yeah. You're like, do I practice what I preach? You know what I mean? Do I?
Because, and that's the biggest thing I think for anyone with a platform, right? Is that, are you living out the thing you're posting? We see this with entrepreneurs all the time. I don't want to get off topic, but I think in the masculinity space, right? There's a quote that I love. Don't be a gentleman to other people's women and be a monster to yours. I think that particular quote goes hand in hand with what we're talking about is
definitely
don't be patient, don't be kind, don't be affirming, don't do all those things for somebody else's woman when they're around. And now she's saying, why don't you do those things for me? And then your woman's looking at you sideways like, honey, he is not like that at home. How do you keep yourself in check and in integrity when it comes to these belief systems and applying them in your life at home?
Look, working out, meditating, and therapy are great things that have helped me tremendously. Exercise is a big one. A couple months ago, before this whole pandemic started, I kind of got into cycling. And man, that has dramatically changed my mindset. You know, just getting on a bike for 40 kilometers and biking, I get home and I just feel like my gas tank's just like empty. Like I've just purged a lot of, you know, negative energy. And I also just feel like also it's active, but it's not so active that I'm like dying. So there is a peace and a stillness within it that I can be alone with my thoughts and actually work through things. I actually share this with motorcycles too, like just going for a motorcycle ride. You know, if I'm stressed out or I got something I got to think about or a decision I got to make, hopping on a motorcycle or a bicycle or whatever, you're just going for a walk, man. Like just allowing yourself, I'm not going to leave my phone at home. I'm not going to be distracted with anything. And I'm just going to allow myself the ability to work through this thought or this challenge that I'm going through. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's super essential. But again, like I said before, like I'm no master of the art and I fall down and I make mistakes. And I think that's something that, you know, I think that's something that's missing in a lot of these masculinity spaces and these Instagram, you know, people who talk about masculinity or these relationship gurus is like, I think there needs to be more transparency with these people that are hosts of these accounts.
Yeah.
That they need to be like, yeah, I post this stuff, but I'm also working on it myself and I'm not doing great, but I'm doing my best and I'm trying to get better every day so that the viewers can connect and go, oh, I thought he had it figured out the whole time. And now I know he's human just like me and he's not Superman. Because then it's harder to, so it becomes unattainable.
And you're not as relatable, you're not as personable. And that's the one thing that I want to kind of give, because I get a lot of messages about how do I get my husband to be like you? How do I get my boyfriend to be like you? And I'm like, you don't want that. You don't really know all that you're asking for.
Yeah.
You're trying to have him become like me. You may have a better off guy. It's just, there's something that you're not enjoying at the moment, right? But I think, man, I could kind of go on forever about this particular topic, because the thing that I'm seeing, the issue that I'm seeing is, and I'm so sorry, women, but I have to say this, is it's like women are looking for this super man that's like a gentleman, but like, it's like he's like perfect. Like he makes no mistakes. So when they read a post about
if he doesn't treat you this way, or if he doesn't, it's all momentary. It's all based in a moment, right?
Yeah.
It's based in anything else outside of like looking at the long term and the big picture, right? And I think that's the issue that I'm seeing, is that they're not looking at the long term, as opposed to like in that particular time, maybe he didn't give you the compliment you wanted. Don't take that post, don't take that meme and now run with it and make him a bad guy. It was a moment.
Mm-hmm. No, and nobody deserves to be defined by their worst day. You know, that's a great quote that I hold on to. You know, now that's not to say that a guy gets, you know, 10 tries. No, that's too much. You get 3 at bat. That's it. You know what I mean? But like, yeah, we don't deserve to be judged on our worst day. We're always trying to learn. And I think there's this topic that comes up. I know you follow the Create the Love on Instagram, and he's talked a lot about, you know, this common thread of both men and women having a complex to fix people, finding someone that they can fix. Right? Oh, you're broken. You're this wounded little bird. I'm going to come and save you. I'm going to put you all back together again and get all my satisfaction over helping you. Right? And it's very toxic and unhealthy. You know what I mean? We got to meet each other halfway. Mm-hmm. And if someone maybe is in that state, then maybe they're not ready to be in a relationship. And I think certain people, you know, you can lead them to water, but you can't make them drink, right? There's that saying too, right? Like there's been a lot of people in my life who've been going through relationship stuff, and I'm like, you know, I give them like, you want to get out of the situation? Here, A, B, C, real simple.
It's out.
And they're like, I can't do it. And I'm like, well, that's on you. You know what I mean? Like, life's going to teach you the things that you need to learn, whether you like it or not. You know, it's very, it doesn't care about the scenarios. It's
and right? Like, I think timing too, when it comes to that, in the sense of lessons and things that happen, I kind of want to urge people in urgency about where we're at right now. There's a lot going on in the world, but now I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, okay, for men in this time, you said kindness, what's the best way right now for men to show up with everything going on in the world right now? What's the best way for men to show up for their communities, to show up for women, to show up for other men? What's the best way for men to show up right now in the world and moving forward?
I think, you know, to make a kind of a pivot, but to answer your thing, it's the same thing that's happening with the racial issues going on right now, right? In terms of what's really being most asked of allies to Black people and allies to other people who are going through these things right now is like, it's not enough to be anti-racist. You know, it's not enough to be, oh, I'm not racist. You have to be anti-racist, right? So in the same thing here, it's like, it's not enough to be like, oh, I don't treat women like that. It's like, you have to, when you're in those spaces, whether it's around women or especially when it's only men, I think how your best way to progress the movement is to be someone who's actively speaking about those things when you're surrounded by men. And if a man says something that is, you know, derogatory or off color, and there's room for growth, that instead of just in your head being like, that was kind of sexist, or
Actually
being like, hey, do you know that like that was kind of offensive, and like, I imagine if a woman was here, you probably wouldn't have said that, but you felt safe because all of these men were here to go, ha 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 ha, and we all laugh. But it's like how you progress forward. You know, same with the racial issues, is like when you're in those circles and you hear those things, you got to speak up.
right.
And I think that's the best we can do, because that's the thing that's going to cause the most change and the chain reaction. It'll just keep spreading and spreading and spreading. You know what I mean? Silence is complacency and complacency, and I think it's definitely a big killer. The silence, it speaks volumes, and so it takes a lot of bravery, though. You know what I mean? In these times, I think, you know, I don't want to get too into politics, but I think a lot of people are you know, having some real talks with their family members about what they believe in, you know what I mean? And trying to change their views. They're more older, views right now. And I know there's a lot of, unrest between family members and stuff around America right now, because we got, the vote coming up in November. And I know a lot of people are having a lot of very challenging conversations with their moms, with their dads, with their grandpas, with, so those conversations will always be difficult.
Yeah.
But I think they're worth it in the end. I really do. And I think that's what's going to cause the most change.
What would you tell a guy? And then we're going to take, in a little bit here, we're going to take some questions. Guys, if you have questions for Giacomo, I already have some from some of you guys. They're pretty amazing, and some are coming in still. A guy who has a hard time communicating, what would you say to him, right? I have a hard time talking. I have a hard time opening up. What would you say to the guy that has a hard time communicating?
I mean, that's pretty broad, like just generally speaking, or to his girlfriend, or he's single and he's trying to meet women and he's having a hard time talking to women. Like, what do you mean?
In a very general sense, like he couldn't do this. A man who couldn't even do this exchange.
So just kind of insecurity and anxiety around speaking and having the light on you.
Yeah.
Keep doing it. Yeah. Because all the things that, I think it was like Will Smith or something said that like the universe puts all the most incredible things on the other side of fear.
Oof.
And he was relating to like skydiving, because he had never skydived before. And so he did this video where he was skydiving, and then he was narrating, saying that the most incredible things are put on the other side of fear. And he was using that door from the cockpit of the plane being this obstacle, but what was on the other side of it was going to be one of the most incredible things he's ever experienced, which it was. You know what I mean? So I think like I have a problem with like public speaking and speaking in front of people. Even, mild anxiety about doing this with you, being totally honest. But I think in the past I've been asked to speak at like conventions or things like that. And I've just, the very famous Shonda Rhimes, which gave me a job 6 years ago, amazing woman. She wrote this book called The Year of Yes. And it was, basically she was like, oh, I'm going to take this experiment for a year, just whenever somebody asks me something, I say yes. And it's a simple exercise that takes courage and bravery. But like anything else in life, the more you do it, A, you become better at it, and B, you become more confident at it. And like that's the shift. So I started doing talks, and when people asked me to like make remarks at events, and I started being like, yep, I'm gonna do it. And then I would immediately be filled with panic right to my teeth. But I'd be like, I'm gonna figure it out. You know what I mean? And nobody's there to hurt me. All these fears and anxieties are all self-given in my head. No one's wanting me to fail, and I have to just get up there and do it. And when I walked off the stage after every one of those talks where I'd speak in front of hundreds of people and all that kind of stuff, I'd be like, there, I did it, and I didn't die. Look at that, I didn't die. You know what I mean? I didn't die. And it doesn't mean I'm not scared or I've conquered that fear. I definitely haven't, but I'm way more confident, way more well-equipped than I was a couple of years ago when I was not wanting to be in that space because I was so afraid of it. So I'd say just keep putting yourself out there. You know what I mean? And it's okay to be silly or look like a fool sometimes. And, if people don't love you and appreciate you for that, then they can kick rocks.
What you're speaking to is vulnerability, right? Like you're speaking to I'm putting myself out there. There's a risk here that I may be accepted. I may not be accepted. I may be epic at it. I may suck at it, but you're being vulnerable. And I think that's one of my biggest missions and hopes for men, is to understand that there's so much beauty in being vulnerable, right? These old school men we were talking about, they don't have a sense of vulnerability. And if they do, it's very minimal, right? It's like a pat on the back, or like they gave you something. But to openly express and say, I'm really proud of the way you handle this. I really like this about you. I think this characteristic about you is amazing. or to even say, hey, Giacomo, man, I think this is incredible that you're doing this talk with me. You're doing an amazing job. People love listening to you. I hope you do more of it, because what you have to say is impacting the world. Even if it's one person a day, one person a minute, one person a year, there's something that's in you that God's given you to impact this world beyond anything you could even think or imagine. That's what I really hope men can actually do. And then that other guy's like, dude, I receive it. And the person giving it is giving it strictly out of love. Like, I don't want anything in return from giving that to you.
Definitely.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah. And I think, you know, when you're saying that those men don't have the vulnerability, I think they do have it. It's buried.
It's buried.
And it was never given permission, but it's there, and you can dig it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm sure you can relate to this with maybe father figures in your life or grandparent figures that, like, it was just a different way of communicating, and the way that they showed love and they showed affection were different ways. And this is kind of related to, like, I'm sure you've heard the concept of love languages in relationships, right? It's very common. It's very talked about in the relationship space. But I think it's a really big one that people need to kind of keep coming back to, because based on the way that we were raised in our life, we receive love in certain ways, and we give love in certain ways.
Yeah.
And that just simply will not be compatible with certain people. And you will be compatible with other people.
Right.
And, you know, a lot of the times, all different kinds of people with all different kinds of love languages can coexist and have beautiful love, but you need to diagnose those love languages, because
You gotta break
you have to. You got to ask your partner and the person you love, like, you know, when is it where you feel loved the most? What is it that I do when you just feel so absolutely listened to and loved by me? What is it that I do? It's like, oh, when you, like, do the dishes. Wow, okay. Or it's like, oh, I love it, like, when you, like, give me flowers, or, you know what I mean, or whatever, or when you write me a love letter, like, you know, all these little things. So then you, the partner, knows, okay, that's not necessarily how I maybe
wanting to give
naturally give love, but let me invest more in that, because that's the way they receive love. You know what I mean? And so it's about, you know, being humble enough to realize that. And even though, like, oh, but I just want to do this for you all the time, because that's going to make me feel like I'm loving you. And they're going to be like, yeah, but I don't feel love that way. I just don't. So it's not about you anymore. And similarly, you got to communicate to those people how you need to be loved, and they might have to check their game and course correct in their life.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I don't know how we got on that, but
that's been one of the biggest lessons for me, is that there was someone who is big on quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, but, like, I really do love doing big gestures or gifts. And something you said was really important. And she said to me one day, she was like, I don't feel like you're listening to me, you hear me. And so I think that particular thing in a relationship is that I tell people now, you not listening is either more harmful or hurtful than you going out and cheating, you going out and doing something that is obviously hurting them, right? A direct, literal way of you saying, I'm going to hurt you. Not to someone hurts them in more ways than I think people can imagine, right? It says, I don't value what you have to say. It says, I don't respect what you have to say. And what's most important to me right now is what I want to do, not you. But love, like you said, at a certain point with love, I don't know who's at my door right now. This is the worst. I really don't know who that is.
Maybe it's her telling you that you're not listening to her.
I really, like, I'm not getting up to, like, get it. This is so weird. Anyway, so I learned in that moment that I didn't really hear, I wasn't really listening, because I heard what I wanted over what she was asking for. And I think that's one of the most valuable lessons in relationship. And the Bible talks about love does not prefer its own way. So if love does not prefer its own way, that means I have to then die to whatever it is my desire is to give you, and then say, okay, I I want to give you the thing. If I really love you, I'm going to give you the thing you're asking for, not the thing I want to give you. So it's been
Definitely. Yeah. And you have to be real about that cost, because it's easy to go, oh, but I don't want to give that up, and that's going to cost me so much. But you really got to break it down and go, does it though?
Right.
Does it really though
If
cost
you,
that much to
if,
you?
right.
The joy to cost for you ratio, you got to weigh that. Like, if this is going to give them like tremendous amount of joy, and it costs you this much, I mean, it's a no-brainer. You know what I mean? The payoff is so much larger, and something that, you know, in listening to my wife and, you know, things that she said to me, she, you know, she shared with me, you know, if you do this, which is what I'm asking, you subsequently will get all these other things that you're asking for. So it's so simple. It's like, you're asking me for this and I'm asking you for that, but I'm telling you, if you give me this consistently, all those things that you wish and desire and you're asking me for will all just magically lay at your feet. You know what I mean? Because the relationship will be healthier, and I'll feel heard, I'll feel seen, and I'll be so motivated to
willing.
Because so you don't really understand in the moment that this thing you're giving to someone else is actually a gift you're giving yourself. And if you thought of it that way, man, you would be giving away all the time, because you know that it would be coming back to you. But it's hard for us in the moment to think of that way, and it's mind blowing. And I still can't. I still don't got that figured out either.
Figure it out. The most beautiful thing about this conversation is the honesty, right? Like, you know, I'm sure people are like, oh, he's perfect, and you're like, I have my things, right? I have my things.
Everybody does. Everybody does.
And I'm sure your wife appreciates you publicly saying this, right? Like, I know a lot of people who get on a platform, especially men, because they want to keep their image, they want to keep their persona. I can't tarnish it by really being honest about, like, I'm working on this still, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that gives another man hope, hearing that from you and saying, you know what, I can work, I can be better at this. And the whole motto and the whole mantra of New Age Gents is building better men, right? It's not that men are bad. And I think that's what's kind of sucks to me, is that toxic masculinity has kind of been hijacked and made, some people think of it as masculinity as a whole is toxic. Then you have no good men exist. Chivalry is dead. There's all these negative narratives. And I'm like, there's a lot of good men.
Yeah, I think there's two forces at work. I think one of the forces at work is we as a collective are getting better at this, and we're moving forward.
Right.
And there is greater strides to equality and women being treated much, much, much better, even though there's a ton more work to do. The other force that I think is working against it is the invention and explosion of social media, and how we have never before had so many filtered versions of what we could have.
Yeah.
And it's unrealistic. It's unattainable.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned before, this woman reached out to you. Oh, how can I get my husband to be more like you? Or again, if only I could find a guy like you.
Yeah.
And it's like, even though we can be honest about our hardships, our failures, it does not mean that we're still not trying to portray our best version of ourselves on our Instagram and on our social medias, right? And so we all need to remind ourselves of that. We need to take every post with a grain of salt and remind ourselves that most people don't post the bad days. Most people post the good days. They don't say, hey, filing for divorce. You know, nobody does that.
No one says, hey, this is my wife off today, you know?
So we all are living in this bubble where we're just swiping, and all we see is everybody having a good day and everything's working out, and that guy's perfect and that woman's perfect. And then you mirror in your own life, and it's very simple to come up with, you know, thoughts of inadequacy around that within seconds. So that affects mental health. That makes a lot of people ruin really good relationships, actually, that actually had a lot of strength, but because they were so caught up comparing to these very unattainable, unreal, filtered thing, you don't know what's going on between those two people. You know what I mean? There's all these couples, Instagram couples and things like that. You don't know what their life is. You have no idea what their life is.
Sorry, I don't know.
So
it's just like I don't know.
Was someone ringing your doorbell?
Yeah, dude. It's I don't know what's happening today.
Maybe you got a package coming?
Yeah, I should just put like IG live in process, like don't ring doorbell.
It's all good. It's just making it more exciting.
But let me do this. So let's get some questions answered. What is I don't even know this question. So this one guy, and I'm curious how you would answer this question. He says, "I'm not a gentleman, but I want to be, and I was wondering what it's like." And I'm like, I don't know if that's him being sarcastic, but I also feel like, what if this guy's really reaching this question?
I'm not a gentleman, but I want to know what it's like.
Yeah, I'm not a gentleman, but I want to be. So I was wondering what it's like. Like, it sounds like a real question, so we can answer it. I mean, he doesn't live a gentleman lifestyle, right? He doesn't put kindness first, he doesn't put love first, but he wants to be that kind of guy. And I think he wants to know, well, what is that life experience like? What would you say that is?
Yeah, I think gentleman has this very man associated with woman definition.
Yeah.
But I think it's really just about being a good human being.
Right.
You know what I mean? Being a good father, being a good brother, being a good son, being a good partner, a good husband. You know what I mean? Just someone who is just considerate, someone who is patient and someone who is considerate.
But how did it play out for you in your, I think that's the question. What's the reward of it in your life?
I mean, I found that it's been beautiful to have, success in my life, in this passion of mine that I have, which has been tremendously rewarding. But I've been doing a lot of charity work for a long time. My impact has only been able to grow as my career has grown because of the call to action and power that I have on my platform. And I couldn't possibly tell you that anything that I've achieved in my acting life is more meaningful than any of that work,
right?
That like literally helped people, or the satisfaction or the joy that I got from helping people and doing charity work and giving back and raising money for families and people that need it. And so I think that's something that even there, just like, I think I always tell people who want to get involved, because I'm involved with a lot of charity groups in my friend's place, who does a homeless youth resource center here in Hollywood, that like you go in thinking you're helping someone else when you volunteer, but by the end of the day you leave and you're like, oh my God, like I was helping me. Yeah. Like I just fed my soul so much. Like I had this amazing interaction with someone and we connected and I felt like I helped them, and I felt like in turn that person helped me maybe think about something that I was putting off or something I wasn't wanting to deal with. And so, yeah, just that helping others is always helping yourself. Taking an obstacle out of somebody else's way is all coming back to you. I mean, I don't know about like karma and all these concepts, but I just believe that if you do good, good will come back to you. Like it's a reaction.
I just posted that today, actually. A buddy of mine sent me a text and he said, dude, you give so much to the world, then that love is finding its way back to you, right?
Oh man, it has to.
Love is a living thing, right? It's not something that's once and it's dead. Once you give that energy, it circulates from person to person to person to person. But by the time it finds its way back to you, it's this fresh new thing. And I didn't know that I needed it. Like I didn't know that I needed these moments of like random love and a compliment, or let me do this for you out of my own free will, and don't worry about, me giving you anything back or whatever. And I've been kind of sitting with this idea of like, one of the most beautiful things we can do in this life with our energy, with our time, with our efforts, with our thoughts is to give. And I think that's what I want this conversation to be for everyone listening, is like, we didn't want to just have a conversation for the sake of like, for the sake of doing this and whatever. It's like, we want to give something. We want to give anyone who's listening. And in one way or another, not that we're wanting it to, but it will find its way back to us in a shape or form, if someone's going to write you and say, hey, I gave my husband a shot, and now he's the best man he could have ever been. Or
oh my God. And like, how much joy do you get from receiving that message? I mean, how much does that fill you up?
It's beyond, it's overwhelming, because I think to myself, who am I? But then I change my wording and my framing to, I know who I am. Right? It's one's not deserving and the other one is, no, I know that I'm intentionally giving good and love into the world.
Yeah.
So then people would say, well, how did you have an interview with this guy and da 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 da? I'm just giving love, and people, no matter who they are in the world, can feel that, hold that love, and say, you know what? I want to be a part of that. I want to, whatever the case may be, and I want to give that back.
Well, I think that's how a connection between you and I started, because I just connected with the things that you were saying, the things that you were posting, and I similarly felt, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that discussion. You know what I mean? I want to amplify that discussion. Yeah. Which is what we're doing today.
Which is incredible. And I'm like, because for time purposes, thank you for that. Thank you, Nikki. Because one of my favorite messages is she says, my husband and I send your posts back and forth to each other.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? Like,
oh, totally. Yeah.
And I was like, that's amazing. And I mean, there's so many things about you that I resonated with and I related. I'm a romantic, and I think you're romantic. I think everything from like cooking food from scratch to like the music, setting the mood, going on long trips, being in nature, like, you carved your initials into a tree trunk. There's these things that I think are so romantic about you, but I would not for a second call you soft. And I think,
well, I mean, but it's like, it's not even, I don't think it's the words. I think it's like the connotation with the words. It's like, it's like, I don't know. It's like, why does that have to be a bad thing? Or why does it have to be like, you know what I'm saying? Like, or having moments of softness could be beautiful. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Or gentle, maybe the word is.
The word we're looking for though is gentle. And I think gentle is a choice. Right, gentle is I'm choose, and that's why I like the sweater, and that you have the sweater, and that the mantra is, I am doing this because I'm choosing to be this way.
You have to, because it's not the easiest path,
dude.
You have to.
You have to choose it.
It is a conscious decision.
Yeah,
it can't not be, because we as humans are programmed to take the easier path. That's a survival instinct.
Yeah.
When we were Neanderthals and hunting and gathering, and there was two paths over the river, and one was a tree going across the river, and the other option was swimming, you were going to take the tree. It was about surviving. You know what I mean? It was like, so in these things where it's like, it is more cerebral. We do have to think more about the action now. It's not as simple as like how to cross a river. The problems have become so much more complex.
Yeah.
But we have to have more intent and consciousness going into these decisions, and they have to be they have to be conscious, because they're not ever going to be the easiest ones.
No.
The best things for you are always the hardest to do, and anybody who's been in really hard times knows that, where you're like, I have to do this is going to be horrible, like this is going to be the worst day of my life. But I know that the right thing is to end this relationship, quit my job, drop out of school and change majors, whatever the problem is in your life. You're faced with those moments where you know that this has to end. I have to do this, but it sucks. It's going to be horrible. The repercussions are going to be hard to deal with. So it is a conscious choice, and we do need to, be more conscious about that stuff, because the things that are going to lead to our happiness are always going to be more difficult. They're never going to be easy.
Yeah. Jesus. Well, for the sake of time, because we had such a good talk, unfortunately, guys, I won't be able to answer any more questions for now. I think I want to have you on again. Maybe we'll just do a Q&A. I have over 50 questions sitting in here.
Let's answer some questions. Do you got to go?
I do have to go. That's the thing.
Okay.
At noon. But what's one thing you want to leave? What's one thing you would want to leave people with in regard to living from a place of gentleness? What's one thing you would want to leave people with as we finish up this call?
I don't know. That's so broad. It's like leave them with one thing. God. Just be good to yourself. I think be better to yourself. Be a better friend to yourself, and be more gentle with your own heart and your own soul, and find ways each day to take care of yourself so that you can be better to others. Yeah, I think that's kind of what it comes down to. But yeah, let's do this again sometime. I had a blast. This is great.
This is amazing.
And you should really answer your door, man. I mean, someone's trying to get in. I don't know who it is.
Nikki, Jazz, Giacomo, guys, have an amazing Tuesday. Thanks for hopping on. Everyone who tuned in, thank you so much. I'll be doing more of these. I'll be having Giacomo will be back on. And you can follow him on social media right now. I mean, a lot of you are probably already following. I feel like everyone on here they're your fans already. But if you're not, guys, I'm going to post this. I'm going to put a handle, I'm going to put a tag. You guys can follow him. Thank you so much for coming on, man. This has been absolutely a pleasure and so good, man. Have a great day.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much. And if you have some questions, just DM me, and I'll try and answer some of them from this chat.
Got it.
Bye, guys.
Got it.